branches scraping his face. His phone recorded another memo. It's following, I'm lost, timestamped 10:07 a.m. At 10:30 a.m., he saw the shape again, clearer, its body gaunt, limbs too long, moving jerkily like a puppet. He fired 3 more shots straight at it, but it vanished, the Nikon catching nothing, timestamped 10:32 a.m. Exhausted, he kept moving, the trail reappearing, impossibly at 11:15 a.m. He reached his truck at 11:45 a.m., locking the doors, his Nikon out of battery, the knife still in his pack. Nathan drove to Ruthie's diner, hands trembling, and called Lily at 12:05 p.m. I saw something. Meet me. She arrived, seeing his scratched face and torn uniform. They reviewed the Nikon photos, the stone pile stark, the lean-to eerie, but no shape. The iPhone memos were clear, his voice panicked, the whispers faint but audible. Nathan texted his supervisor, Ranger Ellen Cole, with a photo of the knife, timestamp 12:15 p.m. Check sandbank, something's wrong, he wrote. Ellen replied, stay put, we'll patrol. Nathan posted the stone pile photo to R Cryptids under the username ME Ranger29, hitting 7-0 upvotes in 14 hours. Users mentioned Penobscot legends of forest watchers, entities tied to sacred lands, angered by intruders. On September 29, Nathan visited the Millinocket Historical Society, a small museum on Central Street. The curator, Mr. Harold Pike, 72, examined the knife, recognizing the symbols as Penobscot used to mark boundaries. He pulled a 1,931 journal from a logger, Samuel Frost, describing a thing in the woods near Sandbank Stream with eyes like fire. A 1,975 Bangor Daily News article reported missing hikers in the area with odd rock formations noted by rangers. Nathan's gut twisted. Was this thing ancient, guarding the forest? He gave the knife to Harold, wanting it gone. That night, at his cabin, he heard scratches outside, slow, deliberate at 2:27 a.m. He set up his iPhone to record, catching a growl, low, time-stamped 2:29 a.m. He called Lily, who stayed over, both sleepless. On September 30, Nathan contacted Maine Paranormal Society, based in Bangor, 60 miles away. Their leader, Diane Morse, a 44-year-old biologist, met him at Ruthie's, reviewing the photos and audio. This isn't a bear or a hoax, she said. She agreed to investigate, bringing an EMF meter, a thermal camera, and a spirit box. On October 1 at 6:00 a.m., Diane, Nathan, and 2 investigators, Paul and Tara, hiked to the clearing, the stone piles still there, untouched. Diane's EMF meter spiked to 5.2 milligauss, timestamped 7:03 a.m., far above the normal 0.1. The thermal camera showed a heat signature, faint, moving between trees, timestamped 7:06 a.m. The spirit box hissed, saying, "Go, mine, at 7:09 a.m." Nathan's throat tightened. Tara's flashlight died, and Paul saw the shape fleeting 40 yards away. Diane's camera caught it, blurry, time-stamped 7:12 a.m. "We're leaving," Diane said, voice firm. They reached the trailhead at 8:30 a.m., the forest silent. At Diane's office, a rented space in Bangor, they analyzed the data. The EMF spikes, thermal anomaly, and spirit box suggested a territorial entity, possibly tied to Penobscot lore. Diane cited a 1990s study by a tribal elder, Mary Sakabason, on land spirits in the Katahdin region, angered by disrespect. "You crossed a boundary," Diane told Nathan. She arranged for a Penobscot elder, Thomas Paul, 68, to perform a ceremony. On October 2, at 5:00 p.m., Thomas met Nathan at the trailhead, burning sweetgrass, offering tobacco, and praying in Penobscot, asking the entity to rest. The air warmed, Nathan's iPhone catching no sounds, timestamped 5:45 p.m. Nathan posted a final Reddit update on October 3 with the iPhone audio, Nikon photos, and thermal data hitting 11,000 upvotes. He took a desk job at the ranger station, avoiding Sandbank. He keeps the photos on a hard drive. The scratch is quieter now. Millinocket's gearing up for winter. Ruthie's serving chili. But Nathan hikes with a group now. His Glock always loaded, those eyes still in his nightmares. My reflection wasn't me. That's the bone-chilling reality Hannah Sullivan faced in the spring of 2025 in a small city called Concord, New Hampshire, home to about 44,000 people, just 70 miles north of Boston. Concord's a quaint place with a historic downtown, a state house with a golden dome, and cafes like the Works Bakery, where locals grab bagels. Hannah, a 26-year-old graphic designer working remotely for a Manchester ad agency, lived in a one-bedroom apartment on North Main Street, rented for $400 a month. She was practical, not prone to flights of fancy, her life filled with deadlines, yoga classes, and Netflix binges. But on March 10, 2025, something in her bathroom mirror turned her world upside down, showing her a reflection that wasn't her and it didn't want to leave. Concord's the kind of town where you can still find farmers markets on Capitol Street, a craft brewery called Litherman's, and trails along the Merrimack River. Hannah's apartment, in a renovated 1900s building, had charm-high ceilings, hardwood floors, and a clawfoot tub. It also had quirks, like a bathroom mirror that always fogged up, no matter how hot the shower. She lived alone, no pets, her social life revolving around her friend group, Emma, a 25-year-old barista, Tyler, a 27-year-old high school teacher, and Rachel, a 26-year-old nurse. They'd meet at True Brew Barista for trivia nights or hike in White Mountain National Forest. Hannah wasn't into ghost stories, rolling her eyes at Tyler's tales of haunted New England inns. But that Monday night, March 10, everything changed. Hannah got home at 7:00 p.m. after a yoga class at a studio on Warren Street. She was tired, her muscles sore, and headed for a shower. The bathroom was small, with white tiles, a pedestal sink, and the mirror, an oval antique framed in tarnished silver, bolted to the wall. She turned on the hot water, steam rising, and undressed. Her iPhone 13 on the sink, playing a podcast about design trends. At 7:15 p.m., she stepped out, wrapped in a towel, and wiped the mirror clear. Her reflection looked normal at first brown hair, hazel eyes, a freckle on her cheek. But as she reached for her phone, the reflection didn't move. It stood still, staring, its eyes darker, almost black, its mouth twitching into a smirk. Hannah froze, her hand midair, the podcast still playing, timestamp 7:17 p.m. She blinked, and the reflection blinked, but late, like it was mimicking her. She backed away, heart racing, and the reflection stayed, smirking until she flicked off the light and ran out. Hannah didn't sleep well that night. She locked her bathroom door, a flimsy latch, and texted Emma at 7:25 p.m. Weird mirror thing, freaked out. Emma replied, "Too many horror movies, lol. Call me tomorrow." Hannah tried to laugh it off, blaming exhaustion or the steam playing tricks. But at 2:41 a.m., she woke to a sound scratching like nails on glass from the bathroom. She grabbed her phone, recorded a voice memo, "Something's in there," timestamp 2:42 a.m., and stayed in bed, the scratching stopping after 5 minutes. The memo, later checked, cut a faint whisper, "Look," not her voice. She didn't check the bathroom, keeping the door locked, and worked from her couch the next day, March 11, avoiding the mirror entirely. That afternoon, Hannah called Tyler, who came over at 4:00 p.m. She showed him the memo, his face paling. "That's not normal," he said, but suggested a logical fix. Cover the mirror. They hung a towel over it, securing it with duct tape, and tested the bathroom. No sounds, no fog. Tyler stayed for dinner, takeout from Chen's garden, and left at 8:00 p.m. Hannah felt better, but at 11:15 p.m., the towel was on the floor, the mirror clear, though she hadn't touched it. She snapped a photo with her iPhone, time-stamped 11:17 p.m., and saw it. Her reflection, but with those black eyes, head tilted, smiling wider than her face could. She screamed, slammed the door, and called Rachel, who arrived at 11:30 p.m., calming her down. Rachel, practical, said, "Maybe it's the lighting. Let's check tomorrow." On March 12, Hannah bought a digital voice recorder, a Sony ICD UX570 for $79 at Best Buy in Manchester, and a Wisecam V3 for $39, setting it up to face the bathroom door. She hit record at 9:00 p.m., the apartment quiet, the mirror still uncovered, her nerves frayed. At 2:46 a.m., she woke to the scratching again, louder, like claws on metal. The Wise app showed the bathroom door rattling, time-stamped 2:45 a.m., though it was locked. The recorder caught a voice, clear, saying, "See me now," at 2:44 a.m. Deep, not human. Hannah grabbed her keys and drove to a Motel 6 on South River Road, checking in at 3:10 a.m. She texted Emma, Rachel, and Tyler the Wise clip in audio, group chat exploding with, "Get out, stay out!" Emma called, "That's not a prank. Come to my place." Hannah stayed at Emma's apartment, a loft near downtown, on March 13th. She researched her building, visiting the Concord Historical Society, a museum on North State Street. The curator, Mrs. Evelyn Gray, 65, found records. The apartment was part of a 1,902 tenement, site of a 1,947 suicide. A woman, Clara Vance, 32, hanged herself in the bathroom, leaving a note about seeing someone else in the mirror. A 1,947 Concord Monitor article called it a tragedy, mentioning Clara's obsession with an antique mirror bought at an estate sale. Hannah's blood ran cold. Was Clara's mirror hers? She posted the Wise clip to Our Paranormal under the username NH Designer 26, hitting 6-0 upvotes in 12 hours. Users speculated about mirror entities, citing New England folklore of spirits trapped in glass. On March 14, Hannah contacted Granite State Paranormal, a Concord-based group. Their leader, Mark Dillon, a 40-year-old electrician, met her at the Works Bakery, reviewing the footage and audio. "This is a strong presence," he said, likely tied to the mirror. He agreed to investigate, bringing an EMF meter, a thermal camera, and a spirit box. That evening, at 7:00 p.m., Mark, Hannah, and two investigators, Lisa and Greg, entered the apartment, Emma and Rachel waiting outside. The bathroom felt colder, 55 degrees, despite the heater at 70. Mark's EMF meter spiked to 5.4 milligauss near the mirror, time-stamped 7:05 p.m., far above the normal 0.1. The thermal camera showed a cold spot, 10 degrees below the room, in front of the mirror, time-stamped 7:08 p.m. Mark used the spirit box, asking, "Clara, are you here?" It hissed, then said, "Not Clara, mine," at 7:10 p.m. Hannah's knees buckled. The recorder caught a laugh, sharp at 7:12 p.m., the mirror fogging, though no one breathed on it. Mark's face grew serious. "This isn't a ghost. It's something darker, using the mirror as a door." He advised removing it, but warned it might provoke the entity. At 7:30 p.m., Greg unscrewed the mirror, carefully wrapping it in a blanket, the EMF meter dropping to 0.2 milligauss. But as they carried it out, the Wisecam caught a shadow, human-shaped, darting across the bathroom, time-stamped 7:34 p.m. Lisa's flashlight flickered, and the air turned heavy, like syrup. They stored the mirror in Mark's van, locked, and he called a colleague, Sister Margaret Cole, a 58-year-old Catholic spiritualist from Manchester. Hannah crashed at Emma's again, the recorder catching nothing that night. On March 15, Sister Margaret arrived at 6:00 p.m., meeting Hannah and Mark at the apartment. She inspected the bathroom, now mirrorless, and sensed a lingering malice. She found a 1,947 photo of Clara in the Historical Society's archive, her eyes eerily like the reflections. Margaret believed the entity wasn't Clara, but something Clara had summoned, perhaps through occult dabbling. At 6:30 p.m., Margaret performed a cleansing, sprinkling holy water, burning frankincense, and reciting prayers, placing a blessed medallion where the mirror hung. The thermal camera showed no cold spots. Time-stamped 6:45 p.m. The spirit box, used one last time, was silent. Mark took the mirror to a church in Manchester, where it was destroyed in a blessed fire, per Margaret's advice, on March 16. Hannah returned to her apartment on March 17, the bathroom normal, the air light. She posted a final Reddit update with the Wise clip, recorder audio, and Clara's photo, hitting 9-0 upvotes. She moved to a new apartment in Manchester in April 2025, closer to work, avoiding mirrors at night. Concord's bustling again, the works packed with students, the Merrimack flowing calmly. Hannah keeps her Wise cam off, but sometimes, in a store window, she catches a glimpse of something dark and looks away fast. Ancient relic woke, something dark. That's the harrowing truth Abigail Foster uncovered in the early winter of 2025 in a sleepy town called Taos, New Mexico, home to about 6-0 people, nestled in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Taos is known for its adobe architecture, art galleries, and a mystical vibe tied to its Native American and Spanish roots. Abigail, a 33-year-old antiques dealer who ran a shop called Desert Finds on Paseo del Pueblo Sur, had a knack for spotting treasures at estate sales. But on January 15, 2025, a strange artifact she brought home from a local auction unleashed something dark, something that turned her quiet life into a waking nightmare. Taos is a blend of old and new, with tourists flocking to the Taos Pueblo, a UNESCO site, and locals grabbing coffee at places like World Cup Cafe. Abigail's shop, a cozy space filled with vintage lamps, Navajo rugs, and dusty books, was her pride, built after years of hustling at flea markets. She lived above the shop in a loft apartment, with creaky floors and windows overlooking the snow-dusted plaza. Her routine was simple: open the shop at 10:00 a.m., chat with customers, and scour auctions for unique pieces. She wasn't superstitious, brushing off tales of cursed objects as marketing ploys. On January 14, she attended an auction at the Taos County Fairgrounds where a rancher's estate was being liquidated. Among the items was a small carved stone idol, about 6 inches tall, listed as pre-Columbian, origin unknown. Its surface was worn, etched with angular symbols, its face featureless except for deep, hollow eyes. Abigail won it for $120, drawn to its eerie beauty, planning to display it in her shop. She had no idea what she'd invited in. On January 15, Abigail brought the idol to her loft, setting it on a bookshelf next to a cactus and some paperbacks. That night at 8:00 p.m, she was sketching the idol for her shop's Instagram, her iPhone 14 propped up, recording a time-lapse for a reel, time-stamped 8:02 p.m. The loft was warm, 68 degrees, a space heater humming, snow falling outside. As she sketched, the air grew heavy, like a storm was brewing indoors. Her phone's video later showed a flicker, brief, like a shadow, crossing the idol at 8:07 p.m., unnoticed at the time. At 8:15 p.m., she heard a hum, low, like a tuning fork, coming from the bookshelf. She checked, finding the idol warm to the touch, though it had been cold minutes before. She snapped a photo, time-stamped 8:17 p.m., the idol's eyes seeming deeper, almost glowing. Uneasy, she moved it to a drawer, locking it, and went to bed, blaming her imagination. At 2:23 a.m., Abigail woke to a sound scratching, like stone on wood, from the living room. She grabbed her flashlight and phone, recording a voice memo. "Something's moving out there," timestamped 2:24 a.m. The memo caught a whisper, faint, saying, "Take it back, not her voice." She crept out, finding the drawer open, the idol back on the bookshelf, upright, facing her. Her heart pounded. She locked it in a metal cash box, shoving it under her bed, and texted her friend Mateo, a 35-year-old potter who sold at her shop, at 2:30 a.m. "Weird stuff with this statue. Call me," Mateo replied. "Spooky. Talk tomorrow." Abigail didn't sleep, the hum lingering in her ears. On January 16, Abigail opened her shop, but kept the idol upstairs, too rattled to display it. She visited the Taos Public Library, a modern building near the plaza, and researched the idol. A 1,998 book, Artifacts of the Southwest, describes similar carvings found in Chaco Canyon, possibly linked to an ancient cult, though details were vague. A 2010 Taos News article mentioned a local collector, Juan Romero, who'd owned a cursed statue that brought bad luck before he vanished in 2012. Abigail's stomach churned. Was her idol connected? She bought a digital voice recorder, a Zoom H4n Pro for $149 at Best Buy in Santa Fe, 70 miles away, and a Blink mini camera for $29, setting it up to face the cash box in her loft. At 9:00 p.m., she hit record, the apartment quiet, the idol still locked away. At 2:47 a.m., she woke to the hum, louder, and a thud, like something falling. The Blink app showed the cash box open, the idol on the floor, timestamped 2:46 a.m. The recorder caught a voice deep saying, "Keep me." At 2:45 a.m., Abigail grabbed her keys and drove to Mateo's house, a casita on Kit Carson Road, crashing there at 3:15 a.m. On January 17, Abigail and Mateo returned to her loft, finding the idol back on the bookshelf, though she'd left it on the floor. She showed him the Blink footage and audio, his face pale. "That's not right, Abby," he said, suggesting a priest. Abigail, not religious, hesitated but posted the idol's photo to our occult under the username NM-Antiques33, hitting 50 upvotes in 10 hours. A user, Desert Mystic, suggested a Taos Pueblo elder, citing the idol's possible native origin. Abigail emailed the Taos Pueblo Cultural Center, attaching the photo, and got a reply from Maria Vigil, a 60-year-old historian who agreed to meet. That day, Abigail noticed shadows in her peripheral vision, fleeting, human-shaped, vanishing when she turned. Her phone at 6:00 p.m. recorded a video of her loft, timestamped catching a shadow moving across the wall, though she was alone. On January 18, Maria met Abigail at her shop at 3:00 p.m. She examined the idol, now in a locked display case, and frowned. "This is old, maybe Anasazi, not meant for outsiders," she said. She explained that such relics, found in kivas, were vessels for spirits, often dangerous if removed. Maria refused to touch it, but suggested a shaman, Daniel Tewa, from the Pueblo. Abigail contacted Daniel, a 55-year-old with a quiet authority, who arrived that evening with an EMF meter, a thermal camera, and sage, borrowed from a friend in Santa Fe's paranormal scene. The loft felt colder, 60 degrees despite the heater. Daniel's EMF meter spiked to 5.8 milligauss near the idol, timestamped 7:05 p.m., far above the normal 0.1. The thermal camera showed a cold spot, 15 degrees below the room, around the bookshelf, timestamped 7:08 p.m. At 7:12 p.m., the recorder caught a growl, low, not human, saying, "Mine forever." Abigail's knees shook. Daniel set up a spirit box, asking, "What are you?" It hissed, then said, bound, anger. At 7:15 p.m., he nodded, unsurprised. This isn't a ghost, it's a guardian woken by your touch. He advised returning the idol to a Kiva site, but since its origin was unknown, a cleansing was the next option. At 7:30 p.m., the blink cam caught the idol's case, rattling, though locked, time-stamped. Daniel's face grew stern. It knows we're fighting. Abigail, terrified, agreed to the cleansing. She stayed at Mateo's, again, the recorder catching scratches, like claws on metal, at 2:50 a.m., time-stamped from her empty loft. On January 19, Daniel returned at 6:00 p.m. with Maria and a colleague, Elena, a 48-year-old Pueblo spiritualist. They prepared the loft, burning cedar, spreading cornmeal in a circle around the idol, still in its case. Daniel chanted in Tiwa, praying for the spirit's release, while Elena placed a turquoise stone near the idol, a symbol of peace. At 6:45 p.m., the EMF meter dropped to 0.2 milligauss, the cold spot gone. The spirit box, used briefly, was silent. The blink cam caught a shadow, faint, dissolving, time-stamped 6:47 p.m. Abigail felt the air lighten, like a fog lifting. Daniel wrapped the idol in a blanket, taking it to the Pueblo for safekeeping, to be buried in a sacred site not disclosed. Maria warned Abigail, "Respect the old things. They're not yours." Abigail returned to her loft on January 20, the shop bustling with tourists, the plaza bright with snow. She posted a final Reddit update with the blink clip, recorder audio, and idol's photo hitting 8-0 upvotes. She stopped buying unprovenanced artifacts, sticking to pottery and rugs. Taos is calm again, World Cup Cafe packed, the Pueblo welcoming visitors. Abigail keeps her recorder off, but she checks her drawers at night, half expecting those hollow eyes to stare back. Welcome to Midnight Mysteries, where haunting tales and dark secrets unfold under the cover of night. Close your eyes, breathe deep, and drift into eerie stories whispered in the silence of midnight. Perfect for lovers of horror, mystery, and sleep with a thrill. Cursed Doll moved at midnight. Cursed Doll moved at midnight. That's the story Emily Harper stumbled into in the fall of 2023 in a sleepy Ohio town called Millfield. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, where the Dollar General is the biggest store for miles, and where old houses creak with secrets nobody talks about. Emily, a 29-year-old freelance graphic designer, had just moved into a fixer-upper on Maple Street, a 2-story Victorian with peeling paint and a sagging porch. She got it cheap at an estate sale, a steal at 87.0 because the previous owner, Mrs. Evelyn Carver, had passed away at 93, leaving no heirs. The house came with furniture, dusty books, and one peculiar item: a porcelain doll, about 2 feet tall, dressed in a faded blue gown, with glass eyes that seemed to follow you. Emily found it in the attic, tucked in a wooden cradle, wrapped in a yellowed quilt. She thought it was creepy but charming, a relic of a bygone era. She named it Clara, after her grandmother, and set it on a shelf in her living room, next to a thrifted lamp and a stack of design magazines. That was her first mistake. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Millfield, Ohio isn't the kind of place you'd expect a horror story. It's got one stoplight, a diner called Judy's that serves pancakes 24/7, and a volunteer fire department that doubles as the town's social hub. The population hovers around 200, and the biggest news of 2023 was when a raccoon got stuck in the high school's vending machine. But Emily, who grew up in Columbus and craved the quiet, loved it. She'd spend her days sketching logos for clients, sipping coffee on her porch, waving at neighbors like old Mr. Thompson, who walked his beagle every morning at 7:15 sharp. At night, she'd binge true crime podcasts, her AirPods drowning out the house's groans as the wind swept through the Appalachian foothills. It was peaceful, mostly, until October 17, 2023. That night, Emily was working late, her laptop glowing in the dim living room. The clock read 11:47 p.m. when she heard it, a soft thud, like a book falling off a shelf. She froze, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The house was old, sure, but this wasn't the usual creak of settling wood. She muted her podcast, some episode about a missing hiker, and listened. Silence. Then, another thud, sharper, from the direction of the living room shelf. Emily's heart picked up. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and tiptoed across the hardwood floor, her socks muffling her steps. The beams swept over the couch, the coffee table, the shelf. Clara, the doll, was there, upright, her glass eyes glinting. But something was off. Emily could have sworn she'd left Clara facing the window toward the street. Now, the doll was angled toward her, as if watching her work. Emily laughed nervously, chalking it up to her imagination. She'd been listening to too many creepy stories, she told herself. She reached out, adjusted Clara to face the window again, and went back to her laptop. But as she sat down, she felt Ita prickle on the back of her neck, like someone was standing behind her. She spun around. Nothing. Just Clara on the shelf, the lamp casting long shadows across the room. Emily shook her head, saved her work, and went to bed, locking her bedroom door just in case. The next morning, October 18, Emily woke to her alarm at 7:00 a.m., the sun filtering through her curtains. She shuffled downstairs, brewed coffee, and glanced at the shelf. Clara was facing her again, not the window. Emily's stomach dropped. She hadn't touched the doll since last night. She checked the front door locked, the window sealed. She lived alone, no pets, no roommates. Her first thought was a prank, but who? She barely knew her neighbors, and the house had a new deadbolt installed by a locksmith from Athens, Ohio, just 15 miles away. She took a photo of Clara with her phone, time-stamped 7:12 a.m., and sent it to her best friend, Megan, who lived back in Columbus. "This is freaking me out," she texted. Megan replied, "That's creepy AF. Get rid of it." Emily considered it, but she wasn't ready to toss Clara just yet. Maybe it was a loose shelf, or maybe she was misremembering. She turned Clara toward the window again, this time propping a heavy bookend against her to keep her in place. That day, Emily tried to focus on work, but her eyes kept drifting to the shelf. By 3:00 p.m., the bookend was still there, Clara unmoved. She felt silly, even recording a short video on her phone, narrating, "See, nothing weird? Just a doll." She posted it to her Instagram story, mostly for Megan, who'd been texting her doll memes all day. But that night, things got worse. At 11:59 p.m., Emily was brushing her teeth when she heard a scrape, like wood dragging across wood. She spit out her toothpaste, grabbed her phone, and crept downstairs. The living room was dark, the lamp off. She flicked on her flashlight. The bookend was on the floor, 6 feet from the shelf. Clara was facing her, her porcelain hands slightly raised, as if she'd pushed the bookend off herself. Emily's breath caught. She snapped a photo, timestamp 12:01 a.m., October 19, 2023, and backed away, her heart pounding. Emily didn't sleep that night. She sat on her couch, phone in hand, Googling Haunted Dolls, Ohio. She found stories about Annabelle, the famous possessed doll in Connecticut, and a local legend about a cursed toy in Chillicothe, 40 miles south. At 2:14 a.m., she called Megan, who answered groggily. "Em? It's the middle of the night," Megan said. Emily whispered, "It moved again, I swear." Megan, now awake, told her to leave the house, but Emily didn't want to run. She'd sunk her savings into this place. Instead, she decided to document everything, like a true crime host would. She set up her old GoPro camera, bought in 2021 for a trip she never took, to record the shelf overnight. She hit record at 3:07 a.m., the red light blinking, and went to bed, locking her door. On October 19, Emily woke at 8:00 a.m., her eyes gritty from lack of sleep. She checked the GoPro footage. At first, it was just the shelf, Clara motionless, the bookend still on the floor. But at 3 a.m., something happened. The footage showed Clara's head turning slowly toward the camera. No hands, no strings, just the doll moving on its own. Then, at 4 a.m., her arms twitched and the camera shook as if something had bumped it. Emily replayed it 5 times, her hands trembling. She uploaded the clip to her laptop, backed it up on a USB drive, and emailed it to Megan with the subject line, "I'm not crazy." Megan called immediately. "That's not normal, Em. Call someone. A priest, a psychic, anyone." Emily didn't know any psychics, but she remembered Mr. Thompson, her neighbor, who'd lived in Millfield for 60 years. At 9:30 a.m., she knocked on his door, the GoPro footage on her phone. Mr. Thompson, a wiry man with a flannel shirt and a coffee mug, invited her in. His living room smelled of pipe, tobacco, and dog fur, his beagle snoring on a rug. Emily showed him the clip. His face paled. "That's Evelyn's doll," he said. She called it her little girl, never let anyone touch it. He told Emily that Evelyn Carver, the house's previous owner, had been obsessed with the doll, claiming it spoke to her. After Evelyn's husband died in 1987, she'd sit in her rocking chair talking to it for hours. The town thought she was eccentric, maybe senile. When Evelyn died in April 2023, the doll was supposed to be sold with the house, but the auctioneer refused to touch it, saying it felt wrong. Emily's skin crawled. She asked Mr. Thompson if Evelyn had ever mentioned anything supernatural. He hesitated, then said, "She thought it was her daughter, reincarnated. Her girl, Clara, died in 1962, age 10. Car accident en route 33. Emily's stomach twisted. She hadn't told Mr. Thompson she'd named the doll Clara. She thanked him, promised to keep him updated, and went home. That afternoon, she drove to the Millfield Public Library, a small brick building with one computer and a microfiche machine. She dug through old newspapers, finding a 1962 article in the Athens Messenger, "Local girl 10 killed in crash." Clara Carver, daughter of Evelyn and George Carver, had died when their Ford Falcon hit a tree on Route 33, 3 miles from Millfield. The article included a grainy photo of Clara, a girl with pigtails, smiling. Emily stared at it, her throat tight. The doll's face wasn't identical, but the resemblance was uncanny. By October 20, Emily was a wreck. She hadn't slept properly in days, and the house felt different, colder, heavier. She kept the GoPro running every night, capturing more footage. On October 19, at 2 a.m., Clara's eyes seemed to blink. On October 20, at 5 a.m., the doll's head tilted, and a faint whisper came through the camera's mic, too soft to make out. Emily sent the clips to a paranormal forum on Reddit, r paranormal, under the username OhioHaunt23. The post got 4 upvotes in 12 hours, with users begging for updates. Some suggested burning the doll, others a cleansing ritual. One user, Ghost Hunter Cbus, claimed to be a paranormal investigator in Columbus and offered to visit. Emily agreed, desperate for answers. Ghost Hunter Cbus, whose real name was Derek Walsh, arrived on October 21 at 6:00 p.m. A stocky man in his 40s with a thermal camera, EMF meter, and a duffel bag of gear. He walked through the house, his EMF meter spiking near the shelf, reading 3.2 milligauss, far above the normal 0.1. "Something's here," Derek said, his voice calm but firm. He set up motion sensors around Clara and a voice recorder to capture EVP's electronic voice phenomena. At 10:00 p.m., they sat in the living room, lights off, the air thick with tension. Derek asked questions aloud. "Who are you? Why are you here?" At 11:58 p.m., the voice recorder picked up a response, a child's voice, clear as day, saying, "I'm Clara, stay with me." Emily's blood ran cold. Derek's face was grim. He'd heard EVPs before, but never this distinct. At midnight, the motion sensors went off. The GoPro, still recording, caught Clara's arms moving, lifting an inch, then dropping. Derek's thermal camera showed a cold spot, 10 degrees lower than the room, hovering over the doll. He told Emily the doll was a vessel, likely tied to Clara Carver's spirit, or something mimicking it. "It's not safe," he said. "You need to remove it." Emily nodded, but she was torn. She felt sorry for Clara, the girl, not the doll. What if the spirit was trapped, not evil? Derek stayed until 2:00 a.m., collecting more data, then left, promising to analyze the EVPs and return with a medium. On October 22, Emily tried to live normally, working on a logo for a client, a craft brewery in Cincinnati. But at noon, she heard a giggle from the living room. She froze, her pen dropping. The giggle came again, high-pitched, like a child's. She grabbed her phone, started recording audio, and walked to the shelf. Clara was facing her, the bookend on the floor again. The giggle stopped. Emily's audio caught nothing, but she was done doubting herself. That night, she wrapped Clara in the quilt, put her in a cardboard box, and drove to St. Paul's Catholic Church in Athens, 15 miles away. She left the box on the steps with a note, "Please bless or destroy, haunted." She didn't sign it. Emily expected relief, but the house felt worse. On October 23, at 12:03 a.m., her GoPro, still aimed at the empty shelf, recorded footsteps, small and deliberate, like a child's. The next night, her bedroom door, always locked, creaked open at 12:01 a.m. She called Derek, who returned on October 25 with a medium Lisa Marino, a 50-year-old woman with kind eyes and a rosary. Lisa walked the house, pausing at the shelf. "She's still here," Lisa said. "The doll was just a focus. Clara's spirit is tied to this place." Lisa performed a cleansing, burning sage, reciting prayers, sprinkling holy water. She told Emily to talk to Clara, to acknowledge her, to help her move on. That night, Emily sat in the living room alone at 11:55 p.m. She spoke softly. "Clara, I know you're here. I'm sorry you're scared. You don't have to stay." At midnight, the air shifted, lighter, like a window had opened. The GoPro caught nothing unusual. For the first time in days, Emily slept through the night. On October 26, she posted a final Reddit update, including the GoPro clips, EVP audio, and thermal data, which hit 10-0 upvotes. Derek and Lisa confirmed the spirit seemed gone, though Lisa warned Emily to stay vigilant. Emily still lives in the house. She keeps the shelf empty, the GoPro packed away. Sometimes, late at night, she thinks she hears a creak, but it's just the house, she hopes. Millfield is quiet again. The diner still serving pancakes. Mr. Thompson still walking his beagle. But Emily knows something lingered here. Something that moved at midnight, and she'll never forget it. Ghostly whispers haunted my dreams. Ghostly whispers haunted my dreams. That's what happened to Lucas Bennett in the summer of 2024 in a small town called Lebanon, Pennsylvania, about 30 miles east of Harrisburg. Lebanon's the kind of place where you can still find mom and pop shops on Main Street, a farmer's market every Saturday, and houses that have stood since the Civil War. Lucas, a 34-year-old high school history teacher, had lived there his whole life, in a modest colonial on Chestnut Street, bought in 2021 for $165,000. The house was old, built in 1853 with narrow stairs, a brick fireplace, and a cellar that smelled of damp earth. Lucas loved its character, the way the floorboards groaned underfoot, the way the windows rattled in a storm. He lived alone, no pets, no partner, just him and his bookshelves packed with biographies and old maps. But in June 2024, something changed. The house wasn't just old anymore, it was alive. Lebanon, with its 26-0 residents, is quiet by most standards. It's got a brew pub called Snitz Creek, a community theater, and a yearly bologna festival that draws a crowd. Lucas fit right in, coaching the high school chess club, grabbing coffee at Kleinfelter's cafe, and chatting with neighbors like Mrs. Dolores Rivera, a retired nurse who'd wave from her porch every evening. He was practical, not the type to believe in ghosts. He'd roll his eyes at his students' stories about haunted cornfields or the lady in white who supposedly wandered Lebanon's cemetery. But on June 12, 2024, Lucas started to question everything. That night, he went to bed at 10:30 p.m., his usual routine. He'd been grading essays on the American Revolution, his desk lamp casting shadows across his cluttered study. Exhausted, he fell asleep quickly, the hum of a box fan drowning out the summer crickets. Around 2:00 a.m., he woke, heart racing, his sheets damp with sweat. He'd had a dream, vivid and wrong. In it, he was standing in his cellar, the air thick and cold, a woman's voice whispering his name, "Lucas, Lucas," over and over. Her voice was soft, almost pleading, but it came from nowhere and everywhere. He couldn't see her, just darkness and the cellar's stone walls. He woke gasping, the whisper still echoing in his head. He checked his phone. 2:03 a.m. He tried to shake it off, blaming stress, maybe the Thai takeout from golden chopsticks he'd had for dinner. But the feeling lingered, like someone was watching him from the corner of his room. Lucas didn't sleep much after that. He got up, turned on every light, and made tea, chamomile, hoping it'd calm him. The house was silent, except for the fan and the occasional creak. He checked the lock's front door, back door, all secure. He even opened the cellar door, a heavy wooden slab, and shone his phone's flashlight down the stairs. Nothing but cobwebs and an old furnace. He laughed it off, closed the door, and went back to bed, leaving the hallway light on. But the next night, June 13, it happened again. Same dream, same cellar, same whisper. "Lucas, Lucas." This time the voice sounded closer, like it was right beside his ear. He woke at 2:01 a.m., his alarm clock glowing red, his throat was dry, his hands shaking. He grabbed a notebook from his nightstand, a habit from grading, and wrote, "Dream again, woman's voice, cellar, 2:01 a.m." He needed proof he wasn't losing it. By June 14, Lucas was rattled. He taught his classes on autopilot, his students noticing his bloodshot eyes. After school, he stopped by Kleinfelter's cafe and told his friend Jake, the barista, about the dreams. Jake, a 25-year-old with a man bun and a true crime podcast obsession, grinned. "Dude, your house is haunted. Bet it's the lady in white." Lucas scoffed, but Jake's words stuck. That afternoon, Lucas called his mom, Ellen, who lived in Lancaster, 40 miles away. She was practical, a retired accountant, and told him to see a doctor, maybe get a sleep study. "You're working too hard," she said. Lucas agreed, but deep down, he knew it wasn't stress. The whispers felt real, like they were reaching into his mind. On June 15, Lucas decided to document everything like a historian would. He bought a digital voice recorder, a Sony ICD PX370 from Best Buy in Harrisburg for $59.99, and set it on his nightstand that night. He hit record at 10:45 p.m., the red light blinking, and fell asleep. At 2 a.m., he woke from the same dream, the whisper louder, almost desperate, "Lucas, help me." He checked the recorder, his hands clumsy with adrenaline. The audio was clear. At 2:00 a.m., a woman's voice, faint but unmistakable, said, "Lucas, help me." No one else was in the house. Lucas played it back 3 times, his stomach churning. He texted Jake at 2:15 a.m., attaching the audio. Jake replied, "Holy crap, that's an EVP. You got a ghost, man." Lucas barely slept after that. On June 16, he drove to the Lebanon County Historical Society, a small museum on Cumberland Street, to dig into his house's past. The librarian, Ms. Patricia Klein, a 70-year-old with bifocals, helped him search property records. The house at 412 Chestnut Street had been built in 1853, by a merchant, Samuel Weiss. In 1876, it was sold to a family, the Morgans. Patricia found a newspaper clipping from the Lebanon Daily News dated August 3, 1878, tragedy at Morgan residence. Elizabeth Morgan, age 28, had died in the cellar, found by her husband Thomas after she'd fallen down the stairs. The article called it an accident, but neighbors whispered about foul play. Thomas moved away a year later, and the house changed hands often, with owners complaining of strange noises. Lucas's skin prickled. Elizabeth, was that the voice? That night, June 17, Lucas set up the recorder again and added a webcam, a Logitech C920 he'd used for virtual classes in 2020, aimed at his bed. He wanted proof, something to show it wasn't just dreams. At 4 a.m., he woke, the whisper now a plea, "Lucas, find me." The recorder caught it clearer at 2 a.m. "Lucas, find me." The webcam footage was worse. At 3 a.m., a shadow moved across his room, human-shaped, near the foot of his bed. It wasn't a car's headlight, she's curtains were drawn. Lucas uploaded the clip to his laptop, time-stamped, and backed it up on a hard drive. He posted it to a paranormal subreddit, r/Ghosts, under the username ChessTeacherPA. The post got 6 upvotes in 24 hours, with users urging him to leave or contact a medium. On June 18, Lucas was a mess. He called in sick, his first time in 3 years, and reached out to Jake, who connected him with a local paranormal group, Susquehanna Spirits. Their leader, Karen Lutz, a 45-year-old former paramedic, visited that evening with an EMF meter, a spirit box, and a thermal camera. Karen walked the house, her meter spiking to 4.1 milligauss in the cellar, way above the normal 0.2. "There's energy here," she said. At 10:00 p.m., they held a session in the cellar, the air heavy, the stone walls slick with moisture. Karen used the spirit box, a device that scans radio frequencies for voices. At 10:47 p.m., it crackled and a voice said, "Elizabeth, trapped." Lucas's knees buckled. Karen asked, "Elizabeth, are you here?" The box replied, "Help me." The thermal camera showed a cold spot, 8 degrees below the room near the stairs. Karen told Lucas the cellar was a hot spot, likely where Elizabeth died. She suspected Elizabeth's spirit was stuck, reliving her death, reaching out through his dreams. "She's not malicious," Karen said, "but she's desperate." She advised a cleansing, but warned it might not work if Elizabeth's death was unresolved. Lucas nodded, his mind racing. He'd taught about historical mysteries, unsolved cases. Could he solve this one? On June 19, he returned to the Historical Society, digging deeper. He found a 1,879 court record. Thomas Morgan had been questioned about Elizabeth's death, but never charged. A neighbor, Mary Klein, had testified that Elizabeth was unhappy, that Thomas was rough with her. The case was dropped for lack of evidence. That night, Lucas set up the recorder, webcam, and a new motion sensor, bought for $29.99 from Amazon. At 1 a.m., he woke, the whisper now a cry, "Lucas, he pushed me." The recorder caught it at 2:00 a.m. He pushed me. The motion sensor triggered at 2 a.m., no visible cause. The webcam showed the shadow again, clearer, a woman's silhouette by his door. Lucas was done sleeping in the house. He packed a bag, drove to a Holiday Inn in Harrisburg, and checked in at 3:30 a.m. He called Karen, who agreed to bring a medium, Teresa Cole, for a second session. On June 20, Karen and Teresa, a 60-year-old with a calm voice and a cross necklace, met Lucas at the house. Teresa sensed Elizabeth immediately, describing a woman in a long dress, her hair pinned up, standing in the cellar. "She's angry," Teresa said. "Not at you, at him." They held a session at 9:00 p.m. Teresa speaking softly. Elizabeth, you're safe. Tell us what happened, the spirit box hissed, then said, Thomas. Stairs. Pushed. Lucas's heart sank. Teresa performed a cleansing, burning white sage, reciting a prayer and placing salt at the cellar's entrance. She told Lucas to address Elizabeth, to acknowledge her pain. At 11:55 p.m., Lucas sat in the cellar alone and said, Elizabeth, I hear you. I believe you. You can rest now. At midnight, the air lightened, the cellar less oppressive. The webcam, still running, caught no shadows. On June 21, Lucas slept in his bed. No dreams, no whispers. He posted a final Reddit update, including the EVP audio, webcam clips, and thermal data, hitting 12-0 upvotes. Karen and Teresa confirmed the energy had shifted, though Teresa warned spirits can linger. Lucas kept teaching, kept coaching chess, but he never opened the cellar door again. He hung a cross above it just in case. Lebanon went back to normal. The Bologna Festival planning for 2025. Mrs. Rivera still waving from her porch. But Lucas knows Elizabeth was there, her whispers in his dreams, and he'll never unhear them. Abandoned Asylum's terrifying secret uncovered. Abandoned Asylum hid a terrifying secret. That's what Ryan Mitchell discovered in the spring of 2025 in a forgotten corner of West Virginia called Point Pleasant, a town of about 40 people nestled along the Ohio River. Point Pleasant is best known for the Mothman legend, a winged creature tied to a 1,967 bridge collapse, but Ryan's story has nothing to do with that. It's about the old Blackwell Asylum, a sprawling, decaying complex on the outskirts of town, shuttered since 1983. Ryan, a 27-year-old mechanic who fixed trucks at a local garage, wasn't looking for trouble. He was just curious, the kind of guy who'd watch Urbex videos on YouTube and dream of exploring. But on March 22, 2025, his curiosity led him to a place no one should have gone, and he uncovered something that still keeps him awake at night. Point Pleasant is a quiet town, with a Dollar Tree, a diner called the Coffee Grinder, and a riverfront park where folks fish for catfish. The Blackwell Asylum, though, is a blight on the landscape, a mile from the nearest road, hidden by overgrown pines and rusted no trespassing signs. Built in 1890 as the Blackwell Lunatic Asylum, it housed thousands over the years patients, with mental illnesses, criminals, and anyone society deemed unfit. By the 1970s, reports of abuse, experimental treatments, and mysterious deaths had piled up, and the state closed it after a 1982 expose in the Charleston Gazette. Ryan knew the stories, whispered at the garage or over beers at Tudor's Biscuit World. Kids said the asylum was haunted, that screams echoed at night. Ryan didn't buy it. He figured the real horror was history, not ghosts, but he wanted to see it for himself. On March 22, Ryan and his buddy, Caleb Turner, a 25-year-old welder, planned a trip to Blackwell. They'd been talking about it for weeks, hyped by YouTube channels like Exploring with Josh. Ryan packed a backpack with a flashlight, a GoPro Hero 10 he'd bought used for $200, a water bottle, and a pocket knife. Caleb brought a crowbar, just in case, and his iPhone for photos. They drove Ryan's 2018 Ford F-150 to a dirt road near the asylum, parking at 3:00 p.m. under a gray sky. The air was chilly, about 45 degrees, with a breeze rustling the pines. They hopped a sagging chain-link fence, the GoPro strapped to Ryan's chest, recording. The asylum loomed ahead, a red brick monolith with broken windows, ivy choking the walls, and a collapsed chimney. It looked like a place time forgot, and Ryan felt a thrill, not fear. That was his first mistake. They entered through a side door, the lock long broken, and stepped into a hallway littered with debris-spilling paint, shattered tiles, and rusted gurneys. The air smelled of mold and something sharper, like old medicine. Ryan's GoPro caught it all. The graffiti-covered walls, the flickering light from their flashlights, Caleb's nervous laugh. They explored the first floor, finding an old cafeteria with overturned tables, a nurse's station with scattered files, and a therapy room with a cracked electroshock machine. Ryan narrated for the camera, "This is creepy, but kinda cool." At 3:47 p.m., they reached a stairwell to the basement marked Ward C restricted in faded paint. Caleb hesitated, but Ryan, adrenaline pumping, said, "Come on, man, this is the good stuff." They descended, the stairs creaking, the air growing colder, heavier. The basement was different. The walls were concrete, stained with water, and the corridors narrower, like a maze. Their flashlights cast long shadows, and the GoPro's audio picked up a faint drip, drip, drip. They found locked doors, some with small barred windows, and rooms filled with junk syringes, broken chairs, a straitjacket hanging on a hook. Ryan's excitement faded. "This feels wrong," he whispered. Caleb nodded, gripping the crowbar. At 4:12 p.m., they reached a door labeled Observation Room 3. It was ajar, unlike the others. Ryan pushed it open, the hinges screaming. Inside was a small room, maybe 10 by 10 feet, with a rusted metal table bolted to the floor, restraints dangling from the sides. On the table was a leather-bound ledger, its pages yellowed but intact. Ryan picked it up, his hands steady despite the chill in his bones. The ledger was a patient log, dated 1953 to 1955, from a Dr. Harold Vance, chief psychiatrist. It listed names, diagnoses, and treatments. Most were routine sedatives, therapy, but the last entry, dated June 17, 1955, was different. It described patient 47, a woman named Margaret Lowe, age 32, admitted for hysteria. The note read, "Subject resistant to standard protocols. Initiated procedure 12. Results inconclusive. Subject terminated." Ryan's stomach twisted. Terminated? He flipped the page, finding a sketch. A woman strapped to a table, wires attached to her head, a machine labeled Project Echelon. Caleb, looking over his shoulder, said, "Dude, this is bad. We should go." But Ryan couldn't stop. He slipped the ledger into his backpack, the GoPro still rolling, time-stamped 4:19 p.m. That's when they heard it. A low moan, like someone in pain, coming from deeper in the basement. Ryan froze, his flashlight shaking. Caleb whispered, "That's not the wind." The GoPro's audio caught it, faint but clear, at 4:21 p.m. They backed out of the room, their footsteps loud in the silence. The moan came again, closer, followed by a scrape like metal on concrete. Ryan's mind raced, maybe a squatter, an animal? But the asylum had been empty for decades, patrolled occasionally by county deputies. They turned a corner, and their flashlights hit something. A figure, humanoid, at the end of the hall, maybe 50 feet away. It was tall, thin, its head tilted unnaturally. The GoPro caught a glimpse before Ryan swung the camera away, his breath ragged. Caleb grabbed his arm. "Run now!" They bolted, the moan turning into a wail behind them. They reached the stairs, scrambling up, the GoPro bouncing, recording chaos. At the first floor, they didn't stop, sprinting through the hallway, out the side door, and over the fence. They didn't look back until they were in the truck. Doors locked at 4:37 p.m. Ryan's hands shook as he stopped the GoPro. Caleb was pale, muttering, "What was that?" Ryan didn't answer. He drove straight to his apartment on Walnut Street, a one-bedroom above a laundromat. There, they watched the footage. The figure in the hall was blurry but real, its eyes reflective, like an animal's, but its body too human. The ledger was real, too, its ink smudged but legible. Ryan uploaded the footage to his laptop, time-stamped, and backed it up on a flash drive. He texted his sister Lauren, a nurse in Huntington, 60 miles away, with a clip. "This is insane," she replied. "Don't go back." But Ryan couldn't let it go. On March 23, he drove to the Point Pleasant Library, a small building with free Wi-Fi and a local history section. He searched for Blackwell Asylum records, finding a 1982 Gazette article, "Asylum Closed Amid Scandal." It mentioned Dr. quote, Vance, accused of unethical experiments in the 1950s, including Project Echelon, a rumored CIA-funded study on mind control. No charges were filed. Vance died in 1960. Ryan found a 1955 obituary for Margaret Lowe, listed as deceased at Blackwell Asylum, cause unknown. Her photo showed a woman with dark hair, her eyes hauntingly familiar. Ryan's skin crawled. Was she the figure? He posted the ledger's last page to a Reddit forum, r Urban Exploration, under the username WVNech88. The post hit 0 upvotes in 18 hours, with users speculating about ghosts, government cover-ups, or worse. On March 24, Ryan and Caleb agreed to return, but not alone. They contacted Appalachian Paranormal, a group based in Charleston. The leader, Emma Dorsey, a 38-year-old former cop, arrived on March 25 with 2 investigators, Mark and Jenna, bringing EMF meters, a FLIR thermal camera, and a spirit box. They met at 0 p.m., the sky orange with dusk. Emma reviewed Ryan's footage, her face grim. "Something's active here," she said. They entered the asylum, the air colder now, 38 degrees. In the basement, Emma's EMF meter spiked to 5.3 milligauss near observation room 3, far above the normal 0.1. At 7:14 p.m., the spirit box crackled, spitting out, "Margaret, help!" Ryan's knees weakened. The FLIR showed a cold spot, 12 degrees below the room, shaped like a person by the table. Emma led a session asking, "Margaret Lowe, are you here?" The spirit box replied, "Trapped, Vance." At 7:32 p.m., the moan returned, loud, from the hall. Jenna's flashlight caught Movementa's shadow, tall, darting past a doorway. The GoPro, now on Mark's chest, recorded it, timestamped 7:33 p.m. Emma stayed calm, but her voice was tight. "We're not alone." They moved to leave, but the basement door, which they'd propped open, was shut. Caleb pried it with the crowbar, his hands shaking. The wail came again, closer, as they reached the stairs. At the first floor, they ran, exiting at 7:49 p.m., the asylum silent behind them. Back at Ryan's apartment, Emma analyzed the data. The EMF spikes, thermal anomaly, and spirit box responses suggested a residual entity, likely Margaret, tied to her death. Project Echelon was real, Emma said, citing declassified CIA files from the 1970s. They tested on patients like her. She didn't just die. She was broken. Emma advised Ryan to stay away and offered to contact a medium. Ryan nodded, but he felt guilty. Margaret's story wasn't just a ghost tale. It was a crime, buried by time. On March 26, he drove to the Mason County Courthouse, 10 miles away, and filed a public records request for Blackwell's patient files. A clerk promised to search, but warned most records were destroyed in a 1,984 fire. That night, Ryan slept at Caleb's place, a trailer on Route 2. At 2:17 a.m., he woke, heart pounding, hearing a whisper, "Find me." No recorder caught it, but Ryan knew it was her. He posted a final Reddit update on March 27 with the GoPro clips, spirit box audio, and a scan of the ledger. It hit 15 upvotes, with users urging him to contact the press. On March 28, Emma returned with a medium, Clara Hayes, a 55-year-old with a soft southern drawl. At the asylum, Clara sensed Margaret in the basement, angry, but not evil. She performed a cleansing, burning sage, praying, and placing a quartz crystal on the table. "Margaret, you're free," Clara said. At 8:00 p.m., The air shifted lighter. The FLIR showed no cold spots. Ryan's GoPro caught nothing unusual. Ryan hasn't returned to Blackwell. He still works at the garage, still grabs coffee at the coffee grinder, but he keeps the ledger locked in a safe. The courthouse found no records, but a local reporter, tipped off by Reddit, is digging into Project Echelon. Point Pleasant talks about Ryan's footage now, a new legend to rival Mothman. Sometimes Ryan dreams of the asylum, the table, the moan. He wonders if Margaret found peace or if something else lingers waiting. I explored a haunted tunnel. I explored a tunnel, found horror. That's what happened to Ethan Caldwell in the winter of 2025 in a rural stretch of Tennessee called Copper Hill, a town of barely 300 souls tucked in the Blue Ridge Mountains near the Georgia border. Copper Hill's a place where the past clings tight, with old copper mines scarring the hills and stories of ghosts whispered at the local gas station. Ethan, a 24-year-old part-time bartender at the Copper Kettle, wasn't chasing ghosts. He was bored, stuck in a dead-end job, scrolling YouTube for adventure. But on February 8, 2025, he stumbled into the kind of story that changes you deep in an abandoned mine tunnel called Old Number 7. What he found there wasn't just creepy, it was evil. Copper Hill's small, the kind of town where you know every face at the post office, and the biggest event is the annual Polk County Fair. The mines, though, are its shadow. They boomed in the 1800s, pulling copper from the earth, but by the 1980s they'd shut down, leaving tunnels like Number 7 to rot. Number 7 was infamous, a mile-long shaft off Ducktown Road, sealed with a rusted grate but a